Let's get some analysis now from international relations expert Brooks Spector. Brooks, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. Talk to us about what sense you're getting from, I suppose, what's coming out there. Is Volodymyr Zelenskyy now more prepared for diplomatic intervention, so to speak, to end the war with Russia?
Well, good evening. Good to be with you. A couple of observations quickly, because we don't yet know what is going on in the private meeting between the two presidents, let alone the group from Europe that will be joining. But it's quite clear that Volodymyr Zelenskyy has a little more self-confidence, even in extreme circumstances. You'll note he's not wearing his military sweatshirt. He's wearing a dark suit, dark shirt, dark tie. But he's being bolstered by, just as you say, European Commission President, the NATO Secretary General, and five European heads of government. That in itself means that there is a unified stance, and they in fact met with Zelenskyy at the Ukrainian embassy before the meetings in Washington. So on the whole, I think there's more preparation, there's more intensity, and there's certainly more cohesion on that. But remember, too, that when Donald Trump met with Vladimir Putin, by most people's estimation, he gave away something of the store by disagreeing with himself about a ceasefire followed by negotiations. The problem is that without ceasefires, there will continue to be presumably Russian attacks on Ukrainian military positions, as well as cities, hospitals, schools, and so forth. So it becomes complex and difficult. One of the things I think that we also need to pay attention to is the way public opinion is sliding in both the U.S. and Ukraine. In Ukraine, there is a growing agreement on the part of the public that a negotiated settlement is better than continuing warfare if the negotiated settlement is even partially useful. And at the same time, in the United States, the public support for Donald Trump's handling of foreign affairs continues to slip. So there is some pressure on those two folks to begin to find something that vaguely approaches common ground. Yeah. Now, of course, whether or not that will lead to a trilateral meeting between the Russian head of government, the Ukrainian head of government, and the American president, that obviously remains to be seen, let alone whether such a meeting would have an outcome that is useful, helpful, and more peaceable.
President Donald Trump not ruling out sending U.S. troops to keep peace in Ukraine. Could that indicate a significant shift?
Well, it was a little muzzy, that kind of statement. The talk was to extend some version of Article 5 protection to Ukraine. Article 5 is one of the elements of the NATO alliance's foundational document. An attack on one is an attack on all, and collective security. If such an agreement is reached, and if the Americans sign on to an Article 5 style guarantee, and it's ironclad, conceivably American forces might be called into action should there be another attack. But that's a little far down the road just yet, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Kremlin's representatives seem to have tweeted or put on X the statement by Donald Trump around this question of a ceasefire. I mean, he's not very clear. He says, although I like the concept, but I think it would be a disadvantage to the other party. So it seems they are still pretty much not for the idea of a ceasefire at this particular point, but a downright peace deal that would, I suppose, include those securities and concessions on some swapping of pieces of land.
I'm a little bit puzzled by this constant refrain of land swaps. The Ukrainians don't hold very much territory that is officially Russian. They hold little bits and pieces along the northeastern frontier, not at all like the 20-some% of Ukraine that Russia is currently in control of. I'd like to know what that means when we talk about land swaps. I mean, would it be the tiny bits Ukraine holds for a big chunk of what Russia holds? Or would it be more symbolic in nature? Or would it be an agreement of some type to let those two wayward provinces in the east, the ones that have declared their self-declared independence that the Russians partially controlled, would there be some sort of plebiscite or election or referendum to determine the basis of that? But all of these discussions are off into the future because the whole thing remains vague. And of course, if you listen to Donald Trump in his conversation as they were meeting together, Zelenskyy and Trump, in typical Donald Trump fashion, he veered off into a whole litany of domestic political issues in the United States and his insistence that had he been president, there never would have been a war in the first place, and on and on and on. And you have to wonder what was going through the mind of Mr. Zelenskyy when all that was happening. When in the other room there would shortly be a meeting which was rather more consequential.
Yeah. What does this statement by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy tell us about where his mind is at around a comprehensive settlement? He says his country needs everything. When asked by a reporter what security guarantees he requires to make a deal, he says he needs a strong army which includes weapons, people, training, and intelligence. Can the U.S. and, I suppose, the other allies guarantee that?
Well, I mean, the intelligence is continuing to flow after a brief hiatus from the U.S., and that in a highly technologically deep kind of warfare, that military real-time intelligence matters a great deal. And as you and your audience know, that Donald Trump came on board eventually to allow the European nations to buy the military hardware that Ukraine so desperately needs and wants, as long as the Europeans put up the cash to buy it. And that at least means that the supply of military materiel is not going to be cut off, assuming the Europeans find the cash to do it. The presumption is, of course, that they will, because certainly countries like Germany, Poland, and some of the Baltic states on through Finland are very much aware of the need to bolster the defense both of Ukraine and jointly among themselves. So somehow I get the feeling that Donald Trump is beginning to listen to, at least in part, what the Europeans and Ukraine are beginning to say, even if it means he has to slowly and painfully and carefully pull back a little bit from his really truly warm embrace of Vladimir Putin and giving him all of the benefits of what was a kind of a miniature state visit. Although even if it was in Alaska at a military base, I mean, he got the jet flyover, he got the red carpet, he got the warm hug and kiss, he got to travel in the president's limo. Even if neither of them stuck around to have the lunch that had been so carefully prepared, and that there was no joint statement at the end that both parties agreed to. So I maybe it's my imagination, but I think that Donald Trump is beginning to warm to at least some sense of what the Europeans and the Ukrainians are trying to convey to him.
Brooks, appreciate your time. Thanks for your analysis this evening. That's Brooks Spector, the international relations expert, giving us some analysis on at least what we've heard coming out of that Oval Office between Donald Trump as well as Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Of course, more talks are going to continue with some of the European leaders as well, lined up to have discussions with Washington.